Welcome to Transform Now, a podcast focused on intelligent automation and brought to you by SS&C Blue Prism. On this program, we talk about how organizations globally are rethinking the way they operate, utilizing process orchestration and AI-enabled digital workers to free up humans to do the work that matters most. We also share insights and tips on how you can embrace this new way of working and unleash your full potential. Let's get into the show.
Hello, everyone. Brad Hairston here. Welcome to Transform Now. On the podcast today, I'm thrilled to have Simon Ratcliffe as my guest. Simon lives in London. He is a career consultant who focuses on the private equity sector, and I look forward to chatting with him about the world of M&A and where automation and AI fit into that. Simon, welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Thanks, Brad, and it's really good to be here. So, yes, as you say, Simon Ratcliffe. I've been a consultant for quite a long time, although I didn't start off that way. I actually originally trained as a psychologist. Then I fell into accounting, and then I fell into technology. It's been not a well-planned career in many senses, but when you look back on it, I can make logical sense of it. If not, but I currently work for a company called Beyond. And as you say, we specialize in due diligence and private equity, but also corporate acquisitions as well. And that's a part of the practice run by one partner. I actually run the post due diligence side, which is once something's actually been acquired, how can we create value in there? How can we help drive that business forward? Primarily from a technology point of view, but as you can guess from my background, not entirely.
Simon, I'm really glad to have you on today. And I have to ask, why does it make sense for someone like you, a trained psychologist who also did a little accounting on the side, why does it make sense for you to be giving technology advice to companies?
Actually, I suppose in a way, it's not entirely technology advice that we give. Yes, it's technology driven. My experience of technology, certainly in recent years, just works. It does what it says on the tin. And actually, technology is becoming more and more friendly with SaaS products and a lot more separation. There's not the big monolith that you need anymore to run a business. People are using more and more different things.
Right.
And most of it, because it's written that way, does just work. The problem is, most of the time, is where does it fit in? How do people adopt it and use it? Because actually, I find a lot of technology is bought and becomes shelfware. It just sits out there, or I suppose cloudware, we would now call it, because it's bought but not necessarily adopted. How it fits into the organization, how people adopt it, how it can make their lives better, how it can be truly transformational. We hear this phrase, digital transformation, a lot. And unfortunately, most people focus on the digital and we like to focus on the transformation. That's the people. So that's why being a psychologist helps. The other challenge we face is a lot of IT teams, although people think of them naturally as transformational, innovative, change, they're not. And it's how do you unlock that and how do you find it? We do a lot of work with technology teams. We assess them, we help coach them, we motivate, we try to teach them that element of it. And the accounting side is quite handy as well, because actually if you do any of this without realizing what the value is, and value can always be turned into dollars or pounds or whatever currencies, then actually there is no point to it. And we operate what we call the value equation, which is the value of what we do essentially is the benefit. And you have to be able to measure that benefit financially, less the cost. Unfortunately, too many people go into these programs looking at the cost and they haven't necessarily worked out what the benefit is, and therefore they can't get to the value. So it's about how do you translate? And some of these are quite nebulous measurements. They're not directly obviously monetary. But actually, with an accounting background, it does mean I can apply value to them, or I can apply a financial value to them.
That's great. I love how people like you and me, people in their later season of life, let me just say that in a very delicate way. I love how all the different experiences and industries we've worked in, what have you, ultimately kind of get blended together to come into more practical use in what we do in our later life. And I'm certainly finding that as well. Sounds like you are in what you do. And by the way, I'm not surprised to hear, even though I asked the question, not surprised that you're a psychologist giving technology advice to companies, because it's often been said, technology is not the problem. It's people that are the problem. And so using psychology to address the people factor sometimes is what it takes, right? To get companies improving the way they need to.
I've always said for years, it's about people, process, and technology in that order.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got it. Okay, well, let's talk M&A. According to Bain & Company, in 2023, rapidly rising interest rates led to sharp declines in deal making from the peaks in 2021. However, many think M&A activity will normalize this year in 2024. Is that what you and your colleagues are seeing thus far?
Yes. I mean, broadly speaking, I'd say the first 4 months of this year have probably been the busiest we've ever been, and at pace. I mean, M&A always happens at pace, but not only the volume are we seeing increasing, we're seeing the speed at which people want to get to and assess those transactions, which means there's more interest. Doesn't necessarily mean more deals are going through, but there's definitely more exploration and more interest. And I think it's a little bit like actually what caused the peak in 2021 was a bottleneck of 2020 because a lot didn't happen. Suddenly there was an explosion because they've raised the cash and they need to spend it. And I think that's a little bit what's happening here again is that there was a bit of a bung went in the bottle, if you like, in 2023 for all those reasons you escape. And what we're seeing is that's now coming out. So some of those things haven't changed. Interest rates haven't necessarily declined, but actually the general belief is they're not going to go up again. And in fact, they're likely to come down. So there's more optimism in the air, definitely, at the moment, and a lot more exploration, which is great for us.
Well, no doubt getting back to the normal levels of M&A activity is going to require a more robust approach to value creation. You touched on that a little bit earlier, but can you expand on that? How do you do value creation with your clients, Simon?
So a lot of it comes down to that transformational piece. So a lot of companies that are bought in a state where there is obvious growth available. Otherwise, certainly the equity houses wouldn't buy them. And they will either seek that growth through bolt-ons or they'll seek that growth through trying to find different markets, different routes in there. Where we can help in that process is exactly, as I say, the sort of value equation that we use is we can identify normally tech-driven projects because that's the area of focus. And it's about actually being able to work out those benefits. And it's far easier for us to work out those benefits, particularly if we've done the due diligence in the first place, because we can see the previous place that organization was in. We also then get the map generally from the equity company about how they want to grow. They go into this with fairly clear plans. They either want more of the same market, they want a broader market, they want to diversify through acquisition. We can help them in a number of ways. If it's by further acquisition, we can make sure those acquisitions are bolted on and operating really quickly. Because one of the big failures quite often with any form of M&A is people do the acquisition, but they forget to do the merge bit. And if you don't do the merge, you don't get the benefit. You don't get that greater yield. Where it's about finding newer markets or trying to reach new clients, then we can work with them on those routes to market. How are they getting there? What are they using? And one of the challenges, particularly in some of the acquisitions we see, is there are a lot of legacy in there. And it's the tendency is to say, okay, legacy software, that's a stopper. We're going to have to wait until we fix it. Our approach to that is very different. We go, well, do you know what? Legacy is good. It's been there a long time. Let's build around the outside of it. Let's find a new channel to market with an old system, not messing around replacing the system. So our value creation process is always about trying to create value quickly. And I shouldn't say this as an ex-CFO, but create value quickly. We generate money in the business. We don't give that money back to the business in technology. We then keep that as our investment pot on the other side. And then we can start to build. So it has to kind of be able to start. I don't like the phrase low hanging fruit, but it's getting your foot on the gas quickly so that you can go forward. Easier when we've got a clear steer from whoever the owner is. If not, we'll go in there and work out where that is for them. So we don't mind, as long as we can then get a fairly quick roadmap out there, building the value as we go, building it quickly.
Simon, you mentioned earlier that at your company, you focus on performance improvement in portfolio companies after acquisition, post acquisition. Where does automation and AI fit into that process? Or is it even viable in the PE world? Because I realize the time frames are accelerated. Sometimes the budget constraints are rather stellar. So curious what your thoughts are on that.
So I think part of the problem with automation and AI in anybody's view, PE or otherwise, is the first thing it becomes seen as is a cost-cutting exercise. And that's the problem, because it's not, but not solely. It's about how you turn that around and how you actually look at it. What automation and AI should be is an experience enhancement exercise. There are certain things that I have to do repetitively. I don't enjoy it. I've had a simple rule all my working life, even before automation became a thing. If I have to do something twice, I'm going to write a piece of code. That's how I got into IT, was trying to avoid some financial jobs. I'll get something else to do it. And one of the problems is people see automation and AI as it's going to replace that role. It's going to replace that function. It's going to replace that job. It's not. What it will replace is tasks. And most of the tasks it replaces, the people who are doing them don't want to do them repetitively anyway. And therefore it's positive. It's when you try and align it to too big a thing, like a job or a role or a function, that's when it absolutely, the PE world, it would just become too long. You just couldn't work out how to do it. If you take it down to the task level, you get very quick wins. And that's what I always say to people. The thing with it is put it in and try it. Just try it in certain places, in certain tasks, and see if it works, and see what, again, the people uptake is like, how it fits in the organization. If that works, then actually what you'll get are some champions anyway, and it will start to expand, and it will expand quickly. And it will take out a whole bunch of low-level tasks. What you then do is you release those people as value creators. There are challenges, as we could do 3 7-hour podcasts on the challenges of it. That's not the point here. It is, I think the value can be realized quickly as long as it's done at that task level, and as long as it's and as long as it's understood.
So just to be clear, are some of the private equity companies that you guys are working for, do they actually have an appetite for automation and AI being used as levers to drive performance improvement in portcos?
Yes. As I say, if you keep it at that right level, yes, there's always bigger projects and some of them, but they don't have to be, there's bigger projects in general that potentially mess up their investment window.
Yeah.
Most of them are open to, mainly because when we have the conversation, that's what we're looking for. We're always looking for trying to take out elements and where we can automate. And it doesn't matter what it is. Sometimes it's tasks, sometimes it's functions, whatever it is, how we connect things together. And I think that's the other challenge is when you look at these tasks, and the advantage of looking at tasks is you look at them across the board. So if it's retail, the task could be elements of a return cycle from an e-commerce site, for example. We know that will touch everything from the website to the warehouse. It's about how you then put those elements in place. And again, it's about how you see the value as you go across the board on those. So yeah, they're not opposed to it. I think there's so many people put AI and automation out as a massive thing. And it's not.
Right.
It's like most technology. If you turn it into a 10-year program, first of all, you'll never finish, and B, you'll scare everybody at the get-go. Break it down and get it in there and get it working. And they see that. They're quite happy with that.
You mentioned legacy systems earlier, and I know you see a wide variety of legacy in dealing with portfolio companies that are being acquired. It's always been an interesting observation to me how a lot of times there's effort to try to get them on something more robust or change their legacy environment. And I've always pondered whether it would make more sense to use RPA or digital workers, as we call them, to be that abstraction layer between the people and these legacy systems to do some automation, to drive some improvement without having to go and change all these systems. Because I realize it's a wide spectrum of things you find when you go into these companies, and probably some of it's pretty horrifying what companies are running themselves on.
No, and I think you're absolutely spot on there. It is about using it judiciously, not to have to replace some of the stuff that, quite frankly, you don't need to replace.
Right.
I mean, the great thing about legacy systems on the whole is you can pretty much guarantee they're very reliable, otherwise they wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
They're pretty secure, otherwise they wouldn't be there. I mean, there's some issues, right? But as you say, RPA automation around those, create that abstraction layer, connect customers or systems or whatever else to it through that. Perfect way to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
I recently reconnected with a friend who I met in the 90s. He was doing COBOL 2 programming at the time. And he told me when I saw him a few weeks ago that he's still doing it. He's still supporting and updating and managing COBOL 2 programs at large banks and other companies in that same vein. So, a lot of the old stuff is still around.
It is. The problem is, and I don't want to cast aspersions on a friend, it tends to be a skill that was in decline. There is a graying generation there now. We've set up programs for a number of companies in the past where we built programs to teach young people COBOL. And we were so successful, we were having 21, 22-year-old university students coming along going, I want some of that.
Yeah.
And it works. And so the good news is we're feeding the top of that funnel again with some younger skills. So I think these systems will be around for a long time. I mean, as they said, the mainframe's going to die in 1994. Yeah. I think I'll retire before that happens.
Simon, how is GenAI, the explosion of generative AI, how is that impacting M&A activity in your opinion?
It in exactly the same way as it's impacting the rest of the world in a way in that it's making everything faster. Partly because people, I've seen some M&A reports that were clearly written by GenAI, but very well done. Don't get me wrong. It's properly developed and pointing at internal resources and structures and databases. It's just the ability then to create a report out of that and get a view on the company a lot more quickly. Because it knows what it's looking for. So it is having an impact in there. I think what you're also seeing, though, is a few companies out there that are maybe not as robust as they could be. Potential acquisitions, this is not the few companies, because there's a bit of a reliance on GenAI that hasn't necessarily been put in any technology, right? One of our AI experts, and we have several on our team, will always say to you that the best AI environment in any business, a percentage of it is internally created. It's internally built. Some of it is just the general stuff that's out there that anybody can use.
Right.
Anybody who relies just on general Gen AI, I think I've just made up a new word there, is probably not going to be that successful. Because if you're not relying on what it is you've got internally and you're not building on what you've got internally, why are you there? You're just like everybody else. So it's finding that approach, but it has definitely speeded everything up.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Gen AI, I recently interviewed a research analyst, a gentleman who's with a firm called GAI Insights. They focus entirely on Gen AI. They've developed this interesting framework to try to gauge the impact of Gen AI on different industries. And it's looking at how much your company is digitized and also how much your company focuses on generation and manipulation of words, images, numbers, and sounds. So if you're high in both of those categories, then this framework says, they call it in the crucible, meaning you're going to be completely transformed within the next 3 to 4 years. Now you can sit tight and not do anything, and they would say you're probably going to go away as a company because your competitors are going to do it. They're going to do it better, cheaper, faster, all that. So the industry you're in, the industry that I'm in, professional services, software, media and entertainment, legal, we're all in the crucible, right? What do you think about that? How do you expect your profession, professional services, is going to be transformed in the near term? If that framework is correct, how do you think Gen AI is going to change the way you go to market, the way you advise your customers, the way you get new customers, all those things?
See, I was thinking about this, and I had this conversation with somebody earlier today, and It's interesting that the framework separates words, images, numbers, sounds, if you like. And I think the answer is very different depending on which ones of those are words. I mean, people say GenAI or AI is going to have a massive impact on the legal profession. It'll have a large impact on a small subset. The legal profession for years and years has always worked on the basis of precedent-driven documentation. If you want a contract to buy a house and you go to a lawyer, 95% of that's pre-written already. It's standard because it's statutory.
Right.
They don't need GenAI for that. They don't need it for probably 90% of what they do. Things like novel research for case reviews, for that historical review of what's going on, absolutely is quite useful. It will go out there. It'll replace that journey that every young lawyer over the age of 30 has probably been on. And I don't think it'll make much more difference. I don't think in the production of words, in many ways, certainly in my business, I've been producing a lot of our standard documentation for years using automated systems, using SharePoint, using collections of snippets and things like that. So on words, I'm less convinced. Images and sounds, I think, is massively different. There is so much manual work in grading video, in cleaning up sound, in creating some of those images. I mean, I've written a book recently, and I'll put my hand up. There's some brilliant pencil sketches in it. They were all done by AI. It's because I can't draw, and I wasn't prepared to pay somebody to draw them for. So I think there is, in those areas, oddly, I think there's going to be more of an impact to it. And in numbers, it has its uses. I mean, certainly AI could, if I put my CFO's hat back on, some of the reports I was demanding of my staff, I would get things thrown at me when I went in and said, look, I'd like to see the figure slide this way instead of this way. Now it can be done. But again, I'm not 100% convinced the impact will be that great, because I think a lot of the slicing and dicing has already been done by other systems. What AI does do with things like the words and the numbers is it does remove some of the human research element. It does speed some of that up. I'm not a believer that it's going to massively change those, but images and sound and other areas. I would say things like the media business is probably more likely to transformationally change as a consequence of it. I mean, I was talking to an architect the other day because they were using GenAI to create some, visualizations for their clients based on floor plans.
Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see how things evolve from here and the impact that it actually has on industries. When I think about professional services, and my background before Blue Prism was in your sector, I think the theory goes that people are going to become more and more comfortable seeking advice from a large language model or multiple large language models versus paying someone to come in and assess their situation and give them that same advice. And I know at least one firm in the market, they are actually trying to play offense with this. They've actually developed their own GPT model, if you will, and they use that to promote themselves, that we're going to come in and we're going to give you the best of human intelligence, our experience and skills combined with AI intelligence. And you're going to get the best of both, and we're going to do a great job for you. And so it'll be interesting to see how that works for them. Does that help them grow and get more clients, or does it work against them? I think the jury's out. So it's a fascinating topic.
It's an honest approach as well, because the reality is, as a professional consultant, a lot of what I say to people is adapted to that situation, but it's from that core of knowledge. You're absolutely right. And could I automate some of that? I'm sure I could. And certainly we do. Part of our tech due diligence, we have a product called Lens, which we actually use with clients, and we allow them to do the first pass interrogation. It'll give them the bits. We layer our expertise across the top of it. It does speed it up. It does reduce the cost ultimately as well.
Yeah.
So,
Well, pushing GenAI aside, I want to wrap up today by asking you about something that's not AI specific. You're a fellow of the Royal Society of the Arts. I'd love to hear more about that, if you don't mind. Tell me what that involves and just what your passion is in that area.
So the Royal Society of Arts is probably slightly misnamed these days. Basically, it's an organization that exists to promote social change.
Okay.
Is probably the easiest way to look at it. It's a raft of things, and it's a global organization. And what we are all doing in our own different ways is we are looking at how can we drive change in particular parts of society, parts of the world, sectors, or whatever. So my own passion is twofold, and this clearly as a psychologist is about people. And I'm a huge believer in diversity. And I mean proper diversity, neurodiversity in particular. But I'm also a very passionate rugby player, and I'm a coach.
Okay.
And I worked a lot with people you would not naturally expect to be rugby players because they're neurodiverse. And also other disenfranchised groups, because I think rugby has certainly in the UK, a very middle class sort of capitalist interest, but you don't. Anybody can play, any sex, any orientation, any age, any colour. And it's about building that inclusivity. So that's my own personal project that's inside of all of this, is about creating that. But the Royal Society of the Arts is out there. There are thousands of us. You're elected as a fellow. It's not you don't just say, oh, I want to be a fellow. You have to have done something to do that. But the great thing is, once I become a fellow, I get, generally speaking, every year or two, I get is there somebody you would like to nominate? And I put forward a lady I came across a few years ago, not long ago, because she is an absolute advocate of women in technology. Beyond just talking about it, she lives it, breathes it, works it. And that's how she became a fellow. So we're kind of self-spawning in that sense. And I seriously, if anybody wants to have a look, it's rsa.org.uk. It's a website. There's so many events and they're open to the public, and people can see what's going on, see what we're doing. It's kind of a quiet revolution that's going on in the background.
That's really neat. And you're right. It was very different from what I thought when I saw the name. I was thinking you had some association with your artistic side. So I was expecting that kind of an answer, but it's actually even better answer, driving social change. And I also didn't expect rugby to factor into that.
I can get rugby.
Is this constrained to people in the UK?
It's headquartered in the UK, as the royal bit gives away because it's got royal patronage. So the royal family supports it. The members are global.
Yeah.
I've encountered people from all over the world, even in countries where they don't play rugby.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, Simon, thank you for being on today and letting me kind of dive into the world of M&A with you a bit, and also talk about AI and GenAI. You've got a very unique and compelling perspective on all those things. Your background and your current profession together, I think, contribute to that. So it's been really great talking with you. I appreciate your time, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Thank you for listening to Transform Now, the podcast from SS&C Blue Prism. You can find all of our episodes on your favorite podcast channel, as well as YouTube. To stay on top of the hottest topics in the world of intelligent automation, subscribe now. The future of work is here.